Hello everybody, welcome back to more Ballads at Midnight with me, FG, and our illustrious bard, also me and the vampire, that we've learned a little bit more about last episode, and maybe we'll learn even more this time round. We'll see. The heavens are generous with rain this year. Within a fortnight of my stay, black clouds had begun blotting out the moon. A few days later, we were neck deep in Alluvia's rainfall season. At first, I was nervous that the moat would overflow and flood the estate, but the weather was wickedly fickle. The rain frequently stopped and began anew, like a broken music box. Nonetheless, the ground outside was perpetually muddy. I spent a lot of time indoors. I was reluctant to soil the only boots I owned, and Lucius gave me hell whenever I left dirty footprints in the hall. Tonight, a thick fog hangs like a curtain outside. The windows shake and rattle, straining against the storm. Because I'm disinclined to set foot in violently dreary weather, I decided this is an optimal opportunity to write some new songs. I was surprised to find a number of brushes, parchment, and writing quills stowed away in a cupboard, and even more surprised to find an inkwell that hadn't dried out. I recall how the vampire told me he housed an artist once, and tried to picture whether said artist could have single-handedly smuggled in all these materials. He must have been much sneakier than me, or had a lot more pockets. If I were him, I would have prioritized smuggling some food and weapons instead of art supplies, but I should be grateful to him in any case. I had made myself a bowl of soup, boiled turnip and mushroom, so I could write without being interrupted by hunger. Lucius' disgusting fish can only tide me over for so long. While I never had much interest in cooking, and often survived on trail rations in the past, I do know how to feed myself in a pinch. Although my soup is only palatable due to some dried herbs I scrounged from the near-empty pantry, there may be unforeseen perks to living in a vampire's castle, but gourmet meals are certainly not one of them. Thankfully, I never had much interest in the finer things. While my soup cools, I set a small fire to keep myself warm. On the whole, my impromptu little workspace is comfortable. I've always wanted a writing nook, and this may be the closest I'll ever get to actually having one. Unfortunately, I tapped the nib of my quill against the writing desk, glaring at the blank, loose-leaf piece of parchment. Call me a perfectionist, but I refuse to transcribe a song into my journal until I'm certain it's amazing. Besides, I find it's more freeing to write when I don't care for the paper I'm using. I scratch out the word before my quill completes the arc of the E. I have everything I need to write, don't I? But now that I'm sitting down to do it, my head feels foggy as foggy as the weather outside. Maybe I'm being too hard on myself. Let's try this again. There once was an old farmer who... The weight of each word feels hackneyed and rotten, like old apples. I feel like I'm choking on them. I flip the parchment over, feeling miserable with contempt. Stupid blank page. Before long, I find myself leafing backwards through my journal. It doesn't contain much of my original work. Honestly, to survive as a traveling bard, I've had to memorize and rewrite songs that were already known. Original work, I quickly learned, was not often well received in an unruly tavern. I've been booed, had tomatoes thrown at me, and haven't even gotten into brawls because someone wanted to hear a song I didn't know how to play. So I had to learn. I had to adapt. I had to make it work. At times, I've even stolen promising lyrics from my peers and rivals. I hated doing it, but I did it anyway. And all for what? Freedom? Coin? Glory? Oh, gods, with so much time to think, I can't help but wondering if the life I've led has been one worth living. The vampire was right about the maddening silence. It must be well past midnight. Lucius should be here any minute now. I realized then that, while thoughts of his arrival used to fill me with dread, I've recently looked forward to seeing him. We've been surprising each other with how easily the conversations came, how willing we were to talk. I often find myself trying to stay awake to finish a thought, ready to be shooted to bed the moment he catches me yawning. As much as it pains me, I just can't get the hang of the night cycles. I've tried, because being in his company is far more preferable to being stuck with my own. This leaves me cherishing the few hours we have together each night. Without even realizing it, I had flipped through every page of my songs. My hand pauses over the inside cover of my journal. I gaze absent-mindedly at the strange runic symbol on the first page, some sort of bejeweled pendant encircled by a knotted half-wreath of thorns, which has somehow resisted fading no matter how often I've touched it over the years. Brushing over the bold red ink, I wonder if I'm imagining the faintly sharp prickle across the pads of my fingers. Below the symbol, written in a hurried, clumsy scrawl, are the words, "Keep safe. Oh." I once felt at ease from such simple words. Looking at them now only tightens the knot at the pit of my gut. Maybe this is a sign that I just need to move on to bigger and better things, that I've been too rooted in the past. I shut the journal. My chair squeals against the floor as I stand up, resting my palms on either side of this blasted book. I could toss it into the fireplace if I wanted to. Here and now, I could break the final chains linking me to my past. Keep safe. Those were her instructions to me. Try as I might, I can't define them. I gather the journal into my arms, cradling it against my chest. For a moment, I can still feel that blossom of warmth from the words. Keep safe. I'm going to find Lucius. The silence truly is maddening. I gather my things, striding out into the hall, only to collide unwittingly into the vampire lurking outside. He catches me by my forearms, taking a step back to keep us balanced, although my journal and supplies tumble to the floor. Lucius! FG! Ha! He releases me once he's sure I'm steady, and immediately bends to pick up the mess. No, I seize the journal and hold it away from him. He eyes me with some measure of confusion, but shrugs and picks up the loose parchment instead. I see you found some old supplies. I'm glad they're getting some use, though I really thought the ink would have dried out by now. What have you written so far? There once was an old man in a farm. Old MacDonald. No, anyways, I snatched the documents from him. I won't have you making fun of my first drafts. What are you doing out here? I didn't wish to disturb you. You looked like you were trying to focus. In vain. There was not much to disturb. But you were trying to be considerate. Thank you. He nods, dismissive but polite. He doesn't like to acknowledge gratitude. For you to rush out of the chamber like a bat from a cave. Why? Rushing to seek inspiration elsewhere? No, I can't just admit that I wanted to talk to him and to forget my grievances. Isn't it time for the nightly ballad? He watches me through narrowed eyes, but favors me with a small smile. You need not hurry for such a thing. If you wish to write tonight, you may write. Come. What? Wait, Yobert pulls me back into the chamber, coaxing me to be seated once again at the writing desk. I scowl at him, drawing my knees to my chest. Heels off the furniture. I scowl at him harder, but lower my legs to flatten my heels on the floor. I wanted to write, but I couldn't think of anything. You also never finished your soup. It's gone cold. He looks pointedly at my bowl. You're a terribly slow eater, aren't you? I may yet expire before you finish it. I'm not slow. I'm distracted. Why, do you want my soup? Here. I push it towards him. He gently pushes it back. Nope. Thank you. My taste buds aren't quite what they used to be. A mortal's meal may as well be a mouthful of dirt. That explains your cooking. He arches a brow at me. Forgive me, that was uncalled for. Have I done something to annoy you? No, not at all. I chew my lip. I don't think I want to write anymore, and I don't want any more of this soup. I was presumptuous then. I wouldn't go that far. Look, can we just kind of talk for a while? That's what I was wanted. He extends his arm, gesturing for me to take the opposite seat to him. I relocate gratefully away from the writing desk, slumping onto the cushioned bench. You have something on your mind? No. Yes. But I don't want to talk about it. I understand. What would you like to discuss instead? He leans forward with his elbows propped on his knees. With the candid way he's staring at me, I almost feel like I can tell him anything. But I'd rather not talk about myself. Not yet. What do you eat? I mean, you sustain yourself with blood, but if you only get a guest every couple of years, and even them, you'd let them go, or don't feed on them at all, I can make do with animal blood. Fish, mostly, as the mode is rich with them. Oh, that really explains his cooking. That's another thing I've been wondering. If you can't cross the water, how'd you get the fish? By using tools like any civilized mammal? So a fishing rod. You fish! Sometimes I use a net, sometimes I use a spear, and some rope. I have a very strong throwing arm. Against my better judgment, I observe his shoulders and upper arms, searching for any hints of bulging muscle under his sleeves. If he notices me doing it, he keeps it to himself. For that matter, I'm surprised you haven't asked how I intend to ensure your freedom when I myself cannot cross the water. because I haven't thought about what I'll do when I leave. The thought feels like an anchor in my chest, a heavy reminder of the future. I presumed you'd tell me when it was time? Of course, I can also tell you early. I will simply throw you across the moat like a javelin. You wouldn't. He cackles as I recoil from him. I wouldn't. There's another way. I'll show you in due time. Oh, good. We lapse into a hollow silence as my mind wanders back to my troubles. Until the vampire starts making a tutting sound at me. He studies my face with intent. And I realize too late that my pleasantly neutral facade had at some point fallen into a frown. We're in low spirits tonight. Is the weather bringing you down? How else can I help? I suppose I could try telling a joke, but I only know the one, and no, I shouldn't. I will refrain. It's quite filthy. That piques my interest. I don't mind dirty jokes. I've spent a lot of time in taverns, you know. I'm almost certain I've heard them all. No, you don't understand. This is not meant for polite company. We don't need to be polite company all the time, do we? We could be a little impolite. It's not a little impolite. It's unforgivably dirty. Please? Oh my. Very well. You can't say I didn't warn you. It's not too late to change your minds. You're killing me. Do you want me to beg? I don't think I can go on without hearing it. Tell me. Oh boy, this is gonna be either absolutely terrible. It's gonna be absolutely terrible. It has to be terrible. It has to be a terrible joke. There's no way around it. His laugh is a low rumble in his chest, and he still makes me wait several seconds before he finally delivers his dirty joke. A white horse falls in waist-deep mud. That's it. That's the dirtiest joke you know. What? Wait. He tricked me. He played me for a fool. Oh, I should be so furious with him, but indignant laughter is already bubbling from between my lips. How dare you? It's not even... You're the worst. My laughter ripples into a snort, and I know it's futile to try to contain it. He smiles at me all the while, incorrigibly satisfied. God, I hate this vampire. I had a similar reaction when I first heard the joke. It pleases me to do it some justice. You burst out laughing. I don't remember my exact reaction. It was a long time ago. Well, do you remember who taught you that joke? A former guest, Jillian. Lucius' face softens and my laughter stops like a clogged drain. There's that sadness again. He didn't try to barter with that joke, did he? Oh God, can you imagine? No, this was before I began bartering with people. A darker time. Were your dark times lifted with a joke about a white horse? He smiles at me wryly. Would you like me to tell you about him? I'm surprised at myself when the words spill from my mouth. Not if it troubles you. I mean, if you wish to tell me, I'll listen. He hesitates, tapping on his collarbone until he musters the initiative to speak. When I was first exiled to this estate, 300 years ago, there truly was no escape. I frequently fought with the desperate men and women who were sent here. They feared me, even when I showed them kindness and reason, made a point to attack me when I least expected it. My spine stiffens. That frightened, desperate outlook sounds grimly similar to my own, back when I first arrived. You had no choice but to defend yourself. I did try other methods in hopes of coexisting, of earning their trust, but yes, they tended to turn on me regardless. It often resulted in a fight to the death. Their death. I never could resist untying them. I felt a certain kinship for them, I suppose, before it was inevitably dashed. It was never difficult to overpower them. They were humans, and I was an immortal being. I was becoming more powerful with age too, until one day, when I was careless, I had subdued an intruder and left her at the brink of death. Unbeknownst to me, conditions were ripe for her to turn. As a vampire spawn, she was vicious. Her anger overpowered my compulsion. Overpowered any compulsion I had over her, and she managed to run me through in the same moment I ripped at her throat. His hand hovers over his chest, where his wound must have been. I was alive, but pinned down, paralyzed in place. I was lucky to have fallen in the shadows near my coffin. The vampire spawn was not so lucky. She was well and truly dead, and so she began to decompose, though those claws remained embedded in my chest as a parting gift. I was perpetually awake, but I could not move. I must have lain there for nearly 2 years. I'm sorry. That's horrible. You run into a lot of strife when you become as old as I have. It is not unusual. But it must have been harrowing. Mostly, actually, I was just bored. He's being aloof, but his hand is massaging his chest right above his heart. I assume he doesn't want to show weakness. Jillian was the one who found me there. He gave me a wide berth at first, approached only to use the vampire spawn's claws to cut his bonds before jumping away. Comical, really. By then I was practically a husk. I could sense him, but I could not move, and I couldn't speak. I would sense him coming and going each night, wandering the estate, much like you've been doing. After some time, I returned to my side and tucked the claws out of my chest. He what? I knew the story must have been leading there, but it was still a bit of a shock. Why on earth would someone release a petrified vampire? You must have been kind or stupid. Kind. Let's be nice. I suppose he felt some kinship for you. You were both trapped. He so certainly was kind. Much too kind, I think. He chuckles quietly. He was the one who drew that portrait, the scrap you found. We burnt wood together to make charcoal. He made all kinds of artwork during his stay. I destroyed much of his work when I lost him, and I regret allowing my emotions getting in the way of reason. It wasn't fair. The way he convinced me to have compassion for others, the way his gentle nature allowed us to gather a motley little group. It wasn't fair the way he... This little group of guests I had, they're the ones who figured out a way to escape this blasted estate. I encouraged Julian to go with them, but he wanted to stay behind. He wanted to stay with me. Which meant, of course, that my very next guest was the cruel one. I awoke to the intruder rifling through my things, while Jillian bled out in the courtyard. Death is our fate, all mortals share. I know it all too well, but it shouldn't have been his time. As I let the story sink in, my next words are quietly careful. Did you kill his murderer? Ruthlessly, but it gave me no satisfaction. He heaved a heavy, shuddering breath. Julie was gone. I was alone again and had no one else to blame. Ooh. You were in love with him, weren't you? You've become more direct with each passing day. Yes. I loved him. I'm no stranger to the company of men, women, and anyone in between. Neither was he. Though many years have passed, I still remember him fondly. He was a good man. It was some time after that when I began bartering with my guests. Immediately offering them freedom made them cagey. They suspected me of foul play, of being up to something. It was as if they needed to pay a price for their freedom. It helped them feel at ease. In control. It helped them make sense of... myself. I remember the scuffle we had when I first arrived, the way he disarmed me, but otherwise kept his distance, the way he prowled around and said those menacing things. You had to play a part, the part people expected. It is exhausting, but they fear me more if I don't. And of course, bartering does not come from a place of pure altruism. It gives me something to look forward to. It alleviates my apprehension of what the next guest will have in store. When one finds himself acting as the Queen's personal executioner, the odds are high that some of the people she sends will be dangerous. Though, occasionally I receive someone kind enough to offer a listening ear. Like Jillian. Like you. I blink at him, bewildered. Jillian was kind, but he was a notoriously bad listener. He would have interrupted me 10 times just then, usually with some absurd tangent about how he thought snails were effervescent. What I meant to say is, thank you for listening to my sad old tale about a lost love. I've never told it to anyone before. Can I ask you one more question? Of course, anything. Something about that last word makes my stomach flutter. No, I must be hungry. Right? I grab my deserted bowl and sip at the cold soup. If Jillian was such a good man, what did he do to get sent here? What was his crime? He grins at the question. He edges a little closer to me, as if he wishes to rope me into a conspiracy. Supposedly, he painted an unflattering portrait of a nobleman's daughter. What, that's it? Yes, and he couldn't help it. He was both an architect and a prestigious painter, lauded for his accuracy and attention to detail, to willfully make the girl more beautiful than she was. Well, it would have been a lie, and it would have tarnished his good name. The daughter's betrothed took one look at the portrait and cancelled their arrangement, leaving the nobleman high and dry with an unwed daughter. The nobleman needed someone to take the fall and convince the crown to send Jillian here, but it wasn't Jillian's fault the man had an ugly daughter. I clasp my hand over my mouth. My giggles are punctured only by the sound of crackling fire. I hadn't anticipated that Lucius would make me laugh more than once, let alone show such a vulnerability tonight. And it's so odd. It sounds like the artist was punished for revealing the truth, even if it wasn't entirely his intent to do so. In a way, I suppose I swivel my lute into my lap and gaze down at it. It's awash in glowing firelight. I think I'm ready to tell you what I did. He straightens, immediately at attention. Really? Yeah. You've kept me waiting for so long, I didn't expect. Hold on a moment. I need a drink. Shall I fetch you a glass as well? I think it'll be nice to keep my throat from going dry, yes. What do you have on the menu? Wine. You have wine? Where? Since when? I mean, yeah, sure, if you don't mind sharing. He shoots me a mysterious, winning grin before he stalks off into the halls. Why does he hide these things? Ever so often, he will present me with some new object or tool from God knows where. Just earlier this week, he fetched me a ladder to climb the ledge when I complained about running out of bathing water. Once I climbed up, he made me a promise not to attempt the perilous journey of swimming across the moat. And then he handed me a bucket and told me to take all the water I needed. I could swear I've walked through every hall and peeked in every room. Not once have I ever seen any ladders or buckets until he materialized them into existence. Maybe he knows creation spells? Conjuration magic? A vampire knows magic. That'll be the day. He returns as I muse over the idea, presenting me with my promised glass. Deep, red wine sloshes gently within, glistening like black opal in the room's low lights. I would have poured you an entire barrel, but wine is hard to come by around these parts. Better to be frugal with it. You can carry an entire barrel? I told you, I'm strong. When I first arrived, I even hauled my coffin up all those flights of stairs. Admittedly, it was exhaustion. I was strong enough to do it, but I don't have unlimited stamina. And why were you hauling it upstairs? You wanted to be closer to the sky? You know me so well already. He returns to his seat and crosses his legs, sipping his wine and peering at me over the rim. He looks very at ease indeed. At ease and powerful. I take a slow gulp of my own wine. It's sweeter than I expected, with an undertone of currants and plums. Well, hang on. If you're so strong, how was I able to escape you? I yanked myself free when I first arrived. That sounds dangerously close to a complaint. I'm just curious. I don't begrudge you for it, but surely you've realized by now that I'm very disciplined and have incredible self-control. I released you because I had no desire to restrain you. You were acting like a street cat who didn't want to be held. I didn't want to be scratched. Thanks. Disciplined, incredible self-control. You're full of praise for yourself tonight. I'm serious. These attributes of my characters ensure that I would never bring harm to you. Well, unless you ask me of it. I cough into my wine. What is that supposed to mean? Do you need water? No, I'm good. I'm good. Can you hear how fast my heart is beating? I pluck absent-mindedly at my lute strings, still uncertain if I'm ready to reveal the parts of myself I'd rather forget. But he has been vulnerable with me. It's only fair that I'd be vulnerable with him in turn, and there's no time like the present. I should start with some context. I told you before I grew up here in Alluvia. I had neglected to mention that it was in an orphanage, Nightingale Gardens Home for Girls. His lip just barely twitches, as if he recognizes the name. I wouldn't be surprised, so it's a very old, long-established institution. One of his previous guests may have mentioned it, or grew up there, like me. Everyone told me it was an enviable place to be, especially the matrons who were always so proud to work there. They told me girls would go as far as to murder their own parents in hopes of being sent to Nightingale Gardens. I've never heard of it actually happening, but that was the prevailing attitude. Because the girls of this orphanage were guaranteed to have a place in high society, we were educated vigorously in matters of course, history, handwriting, sewing, and entertainment. Once every several dozen years, the best and brightest girl was even chosen to become Illuvia's next queen. Did they have that tradition when you were human? Yes, I believe I heard something about it in passing, but it was so long ago. Well, the tradition was in full swing when I was young. The last queen was growing old and infirm, and there was talks that the new queen would be chosen soon. How fortunate for you. Yes, you could have been chosen. No, I hated it there. It was stuffy and full of pompous snobs. The matrons had our entire lives planned out for us, without once stopping to ask what we wanted to do. And they had the nerve to act like I should keep my mouth shut and be grateful. The other girls seemed content with their lot, which meant they didn't understand how I felt. They kept me at an arm's length. I hated the pressure to succeed, and I got into a lot of trouble, even back then already. I never would have been in line for the throne. The closest person I had to a friend was An older girl named Ophelia. She was in line for the throne, but we all knew she would be chosen too because she was perfect. She was beautiful, graceful, and always seemed to say the right thing. Always. She was always talking about the changes she'd like to make, the way she'd like to improve her kingdom. She does sound lovely. Forgive me for saying this. No one is perfect, though. Surely your Ophelia is not exempt. He looks a little surprised when I start laughing. You're right. You're absolutely right. She was a godforsaken rascal. She'd lie through her teeth with a smile, and no one was any the wiser. That she let me see her naughty, conniving side. I felt special, you know, and she truly did want to make things better. She was as clever and as sharp as a knife, but she did care about the people around her. At least, that's what I believed. More wine? Please. I drank deeply from my refilled glass before continuing. So, when she was chosen and packed her bags, she promised me up and down that she would write every day. Every single day. I knew that it was forbidden for Olivia's crown to contact the world outside. We both knew that. Every queen was meant to cut all ties with everyone she ever knew before she was chosen. That was the rule. But I believed her, you know. She was so much smarter than me and so crafty, I really thought she'd find a way. I packed the cover of my songwriting journal, which I had placed at my side. I always try to keep it near, even when it pains me. But all she ever sent me was this book with its empty pages, and a hurried little note on the inside cover. I thought she was encouraging me to write my songs in it, and it made me happy for a time, but I never heard from her again. He's watching me with his full attention. I can't stop now. So, what else could I do? I begged the maids to grant me a position in the castle. I begged them day and night. All I wanted was to see Ophelia again. And then finally they snapped at me and told me to stop asking. They told me they barely managed to secure a position for me as a court entertainer in a faraway land, and that it needed to be grateful. But I wasn't grateful. I argued with them until they took me by the ear and showed me what for. I'll never forget it. How they told me to grow up and stop being childish while they raked me across the back. Apparently my destination had no complaints about women with whipping scars. I ran away soon after that with just the clothes I wore and honestly the very things I have with me now. The loot they gave me, the songwriting journal from Ophelia, and a handful of coins. He spoke slowly, reluctant to interject but unable to contain his curiosity. Your crime was running away from this wretched orphanage? Oh, not at all. I gave them the slip. His shoulders sagged with relief. I wish he feels some kinship with the little girl I once was. I went on to become a traveling vagabond for many years. I performed everywhere I could and I saw the world. It was difficult in its own way. People distrusted a new face and meaningful connections were hard to come by. I was even accused of witchcraft sometimes for some reason. Something about corrupting their women and stealing their men with siren songs and yada 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 stupid stuff. Some days were freeing and exciting back then, while other days made me feel like a ghost in search of a final resting place. But no matter what I did or where I went, I couldn't stop thinking about Ophelia. Did you have feelings for this Ophelia of yours? She was practically an adult and I was 6. Which means, yes, I was practically obsessed with her. Not that she ever seemed to fancy anyone. I'd ask her, if she found some boy or girl attractive. She had this way of wrinkling her nose as she turned down every single one of them. Like you? I gawk at him. I notice you wrinkle your nose sometimes when you find something disagreeable. Well, you're not aware. My face suddenly feels rather hot. Anyways, you know how young girls idolize older women. I do. Yeah, wait, what? You do? Yes, I had younger sisters once. We never had the chance to grow close, but I knew they were eager to idolize. That's news to me. I started to ask him about it, but he holds up a hand to stop me. Please, continue with your tale. I apologize for the interruption. He grimaces suddenly, and my brows knit with concern. It's not the first time I've seen that expression.
Lucius? Are you okay?
Suddenly, voice acting.
I'm fine. The coffin.
How's there suddenly voice acting again? What's happening? He flinches as he takes a deep breath.
I'll be fine for a while longer. It just calls to me sometimes.
If you need to go back early...
He slams his fist on the arm of his seat. His wine jostles slightly in his other hand.
No. I'll not let it squander what little time I have away from it.
All right, then.
Forgive me, please. Continue.
I tap my fingers against the cover of my journal, feeling a little agitated, but wanting to gratify his wishes. He'll get upset if I speed through the story, but I can try to shorten it for him. And we will listen to the story next time. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I will see you all then. Take care and goodbye.